Hi, I'm Paul Baumgarten and welcome to this updated version of my Introduction to Python videos. This video is for Python version 3, and for its purposes I will assume you already have Python installed on your computer. If not, I suggest you go to python.org to download and install. I will also assume you have at least a passing familiarity with the idea of computer programming. Not necessarily a lot, but maybe you've at least used Scratch, or you've done an hour of code before, or something along those kinds of lines. This update to my videos is partially inspired by those videos of Jessica McKellar, whose Python videos are excellent, and I have shamelessly stolen some of her material. My videos have been updated for Python version 3, and I've also modified a few things to better suit my students, my classroom environment. So with that out of the way, let's get started. On my computer, once Python is installed, I get an icon like this that says idle, Python version 3.6, which is what I'm using, so I'm going to double click that, and we are up and running. Now, I promise we're not going to get too mathy on you, but let's start with some simple number crunching, shall we? Because a computer is really just a glorified calculator after all, and we can certainly use Python to perform some calculations. So here at this Python shell, let's just type in some numbers and see what happens. So 2 plus 2, I think we all know the answer to that. If I hit enter, Python correctly tells me that it is 4. If I do 7 minus 3, again, the answer is 4. I should have picked something that gives us a different answer. So let's do 7 minus 2, 5. You don't need these spaces. 7 minus 2 works exactly the same. I will probably tend to put in some spaces in the video just to help visually separate different components. Multiplication, we can do that. We use the asterisk to mean multiply. So 3 times 4 gives us 12. And we can also do division. So let's do 10 divided by 2. So we use the slash for division, and the answer to that is 5.0. We can do calculations using exponents as well. We use the double asterisk for that. So 4 asterisk asterisk 2 means 4 squared, or 4 to the power of 2, which is 16. So fairly ordinary stuff. We're just using Python to do some basic calculations here. These are all valid Python commands that we have used so far. I should note at this point that I expect that you are following along with my video. So you should have idle installed and be typing out these commands as I go. So pause the video, type out the commands, unpause the video, keep watching. All right, make sure you do practice doing this stuff, even at this very basic stage when you're thinking, oh, this is just simple math. All right, practice is the only way you're going to get good at programming, and you want to practice the basic stuff so that when it gets harder, you've already got some practice behind you. Okay, don't wait until it's too late to practice. Let's stay on the number theme. Let's just point out a couple of different things, especially when it comes to division. So if I was to take a number like 13 and I divided that by 5, if I type that in on a calculator and do 13.5, what would I get? The calculator would give me 2.6, which if I hit enter, Python gives me that as well. But if I had been in primary school days, and I had have done long division with this, before I reached the ability to come up with the 0.6, 13 divided by 5, I would have worked out that that was 13. So 13 divided by 5 goes 2 times with 3 left over, is what I would have said. And Python gives us a way to work divisions out in that way as well. And there are important times where this will come in handy. So to do this, it's known as integer division. So with a single slash, it is known as floating point division because we will have a decimal point in the answer. But double slash So 13, 2 slashes 5, will tell me that 5 goes into 13 2 times. Because we get 5, and then we get 10, and then there's the 3 left over. So if I need to know that there is that 3 left over when this division occurs, I use 13 and I use the percent sign, and then type in my 5, and that will give me the number 3. And that is telling me that there is 3 left over after 13 has been divided by 5. So 5 goes into 13 completely twice with 3 left over. The leftover one in computer science is known as the modulus. In primary school you knew it as the remainder. We call it the modulus here. So, some basic calculations, but let's get straight into something that's a little more what we'd probably expect for programming, and that is to use a variable. A variable is just a name to a piece of memory inside the computer. And we use that name to be able to set something to that location in memory, and then to be able to recall from it so we can do operations or calculations with it. So for instance, I could type x is equal to 4. And now there is a place in the computer called x, and it has the number 4 set to it. Right now, if I just want to see what's in x, I can just type x and hit enter, and it will tell me that the place called x has a 4. I will also at this time point out that little x, or lowercase x, is different to uppercase x. Right, so here I've got an error telling me that the name uppercase x is not defined. So, important lesson, Python is case sensitive. Uppercase and lowercase mean different things. So I can create a variable called uppercase x and set that to the number 15. So if I type lowercase x, I will get the 4. If I type uppercase x, I will get the 15. All right, so it's just a different name in the memory location. I can perform the calculations that I was doing earlier. I can do those with variables. So 2 times x, right, it'll look up the memory location of x, see that it's the number 4, and then do 2 times the 4 and give me the 8. All right, so what would x minus 3 be? All right, that would be 4 minus 3, which is 1. Fantastic. What names can you give to variables? Anything alphanumeric, so long as it starts with a letter and does not contain any spaces. All right, so this is a variable. All right, it's a bit of a wordy one, but it is a variable. And I could even do, this is a variable times x. What's that going to give me? 400, because it looked up the two variables. It saw this is a variable is 100. It saw that x is 4, and so it did 100 times 4 and gave me 400. All right, so I could use magic. I can use some punctuation. I can use the underscore character, for instance. So I can say that the magic number is 1500. To pinch an example from Jessica McKellar's videos, we can say eggs per cake. There might be 3 eggs in every cake. And how many cakes are we going to make? We're going to make number of cakes is equal to 10. So I can also have a calculation that then stores its value into another variable. So let's create a variable called total eggs. And total eggs is going to be however many eggs there are per cake times by the number of cakes. And I hit enter, and Python has performed that calculation and saved the result in total eggs. So if I was to print this out, what number will we get? We should get 3 times 10 is 30. Woohoo! Okay, we are programming. Fantastic. So, what if I want to print something in my full-on normal Python programs? When I start typing out a multi-line program, Python's not going to spit out a number every time I just type in a variable, because that will become quite overwhelming for whoever's using my program. So I have to say that I want something printed to the screen, and we do that by using the print command. So print and then inside brackets, so open and close round brackets, and then I use quotation marks, and I'm just going to type hello world, because it's traditional when you're learning to program to say hello world. So hit enter, and there's my hello world message. So this is known as a function, and inside this function we provide the information that the function needs to be able to do its job. And in this case, for the print function, it needs to know what message you want to print to the screen. And so we are providing this thing known as a string. And a string is just some text information. It's not limited to numbers like we were using before. It is alphanumeric, and we can use punctuation, but basically Python knows it starts by seeing the quote, and then it looks for the matching quote to know when it finishes. So everything between the quotes is the string. So we can also use strings for our variables. For instance, I could say that my name is Mr. Baumgarten, put that into a string, hit enter. And now there is, in addition to my X and my magic number variable, right, there is now also this name variable called Mr. Baumgarten. Also, you'll notice that Python has changed from double quotes to single quotes because as far as Python is concerned, it doesn't actually care which set of quotes I use, as long as I'm consistent. So if I was to start with single quotes, I would use single quotes to close it. If I start it with double quotes, I use double quotes to close it. And I can add strings together in the same way we can add numbers, we can add strings. So I might want to use this in a print command. I could say print, and let's put in one string that says hello, and put in a space, and then plus the contents of the name string. And so it says hello Mr. Baumgarten, isn't that kind of it? If I then choose to update the contents of name, and maybe I decide to abbreviate my name to just Mr. B, all right, if I now print hello name again, it says hello Mr. B. So the same command has performed two different outputs because the variable has changed. So we can add numbers to numbers, and we can add strings to strings. Can we add a number to a string? What happens if I try to say hello plus 1? We get an error, okay? So this is saying it must be a string, not an integer. All right, so we can't add strings and numbers together. We could do this. All right, because I've used the quotes, inside the 1 is actually now just a string. And there are functions that we can use to convert strings and numbers back and forth. And we'll get into those later. One other function that I will just quickly show you because it's quite useful is how to find out how long your string is. And we use the len command for this. So if I say len hello, right, so I put the string inside my brackets, parentheses, and there are 5 letters inside it, and so it is telling me 5. I could say len name, and it is saying 4 because the last time I updated name, it just says Mr. B, so there's 4 letters inside there. So if I update name to be Mr. Baumgarten again, and now say what is the length of name, it'll tell me there's 13 letters there. All right. We can do some other interesting things with strings. We can multiply strings together. It's occasionally useful. So fish is equal to tuna. I could say fish times 5, and that will give me tuna, 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 tuna. Don't know when you'd want to use that, but it is useful to know. How did I know about the len command? How did I know about the print command? Other than the fact that obviously I've spent a lot of time learning programming. But when you're starting out programming, how do you know these things? Reference notes. You should be taking lots of notes. You should be doing lots of practice, like I've already said. Use Google and look for, when you are Googling, look for results from a website called Stack Overflow. It tends to be one of the most reliable sources of information around. But I want to emphasize, and in fact, let's make you type this out so that you understand it, because it's important. Programming is not about memorizing everything. And let's spell everything correctly. There we go. Programming is not about memorizing everything. It is about understanding what is needed at a particular point, and then check your resources to find out how to implement whatever it is that you need. All right, so if you are one of my students, I do have a little reference booklet that I've written that I'll happily give to you if you ask. All right, but don't fall into the trap of thinking you have to memorize every single command, because there is no way you will do it. All right, especially as a beginner programmer. And when I say beginner, I'm talking the first 5 years. All right, be prepared for the fact you're going to be constantly referencing notes. Okay, you will just make it harder and give up, because you'll think it's impossible if you insist that you have to memorize everything, because you just won't be able to. All right, let's take another look at our string variables and some of the other tricky little things we can do with them. So we've got this name thing, Mr. Baumgarten. Let's change my name. Let's update it. Star Wars movie is out at the moment. So let's make myself Luke Skywalker. Right. Maybe I want to split this up into the first name and the last name. How can I do that? Well, we know that there's a space that separates the two names. If I want just part of a string, I can use my square brackets and put in a couple of numbers separated with a colon, and it will give me some of the letters from the string. Now, the important thing to understand when you are programming is that most programming languages, and certainly Python, begin counting from 0. So what's going on here is I'm asking for the letter from position number 3 up to, but not including, the letter at position number 7. So let's look at my string. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is up to but not including 7. Okay, so that's the letter E, the space, the capital S, and the K, which you'll see is what printed out here. But I only got that if I started counting from 0. 0, 1, 2, 3. All right. So if I want the last name, all right, that would simply be from position number 5 until the end. And if I want to go all the way to the end, then I don't have to include the last number. Python will just automatically keep going until it reaches the end. If I want the start of the name up until some point, in a similar way, I don't have to give it the first number, and it will just automatically go from the starting point. And I want to go up to, but not including, position number 4, so that is Luke. But if I want to make a program that's going to automatically do this, no matter what name I type in, well, I'm going to need a way to find where that space is. And it just so happens that, of course, Python gives us a way. Name.index, and I put in brackets what it is that I'm wanting to find inside my string. In this case, I'm wanting to find where the space is. So if I hit enter on that, it'll tell me that the space is in position number 4. So remember, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I could store that in a variable, just like any other number. All right, space is equal to name index. So if I take a look at space, it'll say the number 4, and I can use that variable instead of typing these numbers in here. So I could say, what is the name from the position of the space plus 1, all right, because I don't want to start from the space, I want to start from the letter after the space. All right, so you know this because here we went from 5 and here we went up to, but not including 4. Okay, so notice that. All right, and that's my surname. And if I want the first name from the beginning up until where that space was, so Luke Skywalker. Let's put all this together into an actual little program where I can type in any name and it will automatically split it into its first name and its surname. So from using the shell that we've been using, go up to File, New File, and you'll get a blank looking page like this. This is just a text editor. Nothing fancy about this. So if I go to File and Save As and dump onto my desktop, all right, exercise 1, we use .py, we use the file extension py for Python files. All right, so now I've saved this and I can just type in a series of Python commands in here. So I'm going to start with a print and say, hello, welcome to my program. All right, and I can close that and that's done. That is a valid program. So if I save this and then come up to run module. Okay, so it started it and it said, hello, welcome to my program. Fantastic. Let's keep adding to this. So let's add print. Please type your full name. All right, and now I'm going to want the user to be able to type something, so I'm going to introduce you to another new function. I want to store it in name, but how can I get whatever they typed? We use the input function, and I'll just have empty brackets for that for now. So what this function will do is stop and wait for the user to type something, and when they hit enter, whatever they've typed will get stored into name. So once I've got a name, I want to find out where the space is. So we've already done this. So space is equal to name.index, and wherever the space appears, it will store that position inside there. And then let's create a variable called first name. Where is the first name? Well, based upon what we've already done, the first name is inside the name. Right, and it is from the beginning point, so we don't need to put in a number. We could put in a 0. Right? So from the 0th character up to, but not including the position of where the space appears. And then I want my family name. All right, and that was from space plus 1 up to the end. And then we can print out some results. So print. Your first name is whatever's stored inside my variable called first name. Print your family name is family name. Close the brackets. All right. File, save, run module. Welcome to my program. Please type your full name. So, Luke Skywalker. Your first name is Luke. Your family name is Skywalker. And then the program stopped. Fantastic. That works a treat. What about if I come back and run the module again? Type your full name. Will it adapt if I give it something different? Han Solo. Your first name is Han. Your family name is Solo. Fantastic. Yeah. All right, so time for you to experiment with that idea a little bit. Have a go, modifying a few things for this, and work through the first set of exercises that I've left for you. Thank you. This has been Mr. Baumgarten, signing out.